So I'd been reluctant to make a video explaining how it feels to suffer from the mental illness that I have for quite some time, but I think that to help educate, it's good to have the perspective of someone who has what's so stigmatized and so misunderstood and just so not talked about. And what I have is what is referred to as a cluster B personality disorder. And that cluster B personality disorder is borderline personality disorder. Like I said, a lot of the information out on the internet about us, people like me that suffer with the things that I suffer from, is outdated and incorrect. New research, regularly is coming out to show that we are not these monsters of people that can't be treated and that who just always bring tornadoes of destruction everywhere they go, although we can be fairly destructive and hurtful. So I guess I just wanted to share a little piece of my journey and my experience with having the disorder. I'll first start off by saying that I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me. I'm not making this video for sympathy. I've been gifted with insight and self-awareness, and I'm one of the lucky ones, I think, because I'm aware now of what my behavior is and how it can be destructive to not only other people, but more importantly, me. So that's something that I would like to first get out there. But to get down to the nitty-gritty, it is probably the most painful thing that I've experienced. There's many different facets and characteristics of the disorder that typify the behavior. But I'd have to say, for me, the most difficult part of my struggle has been struggling with my self-image and my sense of self-worth. And my self-image, I'd say, in terms of borderline, if I had to define it in a borderline way, I would say that it fluctuates from person to person, depending on who I'm around and the group that I'm in, the context that I'm in. My self-esteem is so low that I crave approval. I crave intimacy. I crave other people's acceptance. So I actually adapt who I am to become that person, to kind of fill what I call inside of me a black hole. That's kind of what I refer to when I talk about the destructive nature of borderline. I call it the black hole. So for me, my black hole, it leaves me feeling really empty because I don't know who I am. From situation to situation, I just become this other person because my self-esteem is so shot. And that leaves me kind of desperate sometimes. Desperate to maintain relationships, obviously, because my house of cards always comes falling down. I've created this image in this relationship, and this person finds out that I'm not the way that I portray myself to be. It can be really, destructive, and that ties in with the abandonment issues that we have as borderlines. I cause my own. I'm the cause of my own demise. I create what I am most afraid of. And that's the cyclical, really destructive nature of the disease. And I think that my self-image issues stem from childhood. I don't mean to sound cliche, but it's true. I can remember my mother being very cold. She was abusive, and that's not, she spanked me every now and then. She was abusive. I went to the hospital several times. CPS was called. She was just incredibly cold and angry. And I can remember never being good enough for her, never being what she wanted me to be. I could like never get her attention, and it's still to this day the same way, to the point where I have to keep her at arm's length. But to keep it back in childhood and explain where I think the etiology of my borderline comes from, I was never good enough. So I would shapeshift, like I said before, with my self-image. I would do whatever I had to do to get my mother to like me, to get her to accept me. And I was always clawing for that acceptance. And so, it carries on in my relationships. So that's in terms of the 9 criteria to meet borderline, the one that's self-image. That's where my self-image issue comes from, my lack of not knowing who I am, because I feel this need to be liked by everyone around me and be accepted. Also, I have this destructive pattern of I guess you could say promiscuity. I do things. I'm not so much anymore. I've gotten a lot better with age. But to fill this hole that I have, I I create an image. I'm very charming. I'm very alluring. I'm very seductive. Um, and it creates this need that I have for intimacy that I couldn't get elsewhere. And even if it's only a fleeting moment of intimacy, it kind of fills this hole just in that moment. And then when it's all over, I'm left feeling so empty and so discarded and so used, even more so than I was before. So that's also for borderline women. I think that's a big issue too. Let's see if I can talk about some of my other borderline behavior. I'm bulimic. I don't self-harm, but I binge and purge about 4 times a week. And that fluctuates depending on my level of stability. Anything can set me off into a tailspin where I'm not stable. I can be stable for up to 1.5 years, and then, like that, I just lose it. My coping methods aren't really good. Like I'm emotionally a 15-year-old in a 27-year-old's body. I never learn those emotions. That's another thing. My emotion regulation is not right. And again, not to sound cliche, I also learned that, I think, in childhood, because I can really only remember two emotions from my mother, and that was, angry and ignoring me, or, happy. There was no like, okay, this is what jealousy is, or this is what disappointment is, or this is what excited is. It was just those two emotions. So I didn't really learn how to regulate my emotions and understand them as a little girl. And whenever I came to her with something like about how I felt, it was always invalidated. And that I think is the most damaging thing that you can do to a kid. I don't think the abuse physical was as damaging as the emotional invalidation. It was almost like my emotions weren't real. They had no meaning. They weren't important. And so I never knew how to work with them. I didn't learn how to use them. I didn't learn how to live with them and sit with them. And so now when I have them, they're so extreme. And I only show two real emotions. It's like anger and okay. Like it's the black and white part of the borderline, I think, that I got in that regard. And then there's like the fear of abandonment, which I kind of already touched on, but I'll touch on again. I push people away with my behavior because I'm so used to conflict, and I'm so used to tension in relationships, again, stemming from childhood. I've modeled that. So I'm so used to conflict and tension that I create it. And then I have this need for acceptance. So then when I see that I've pushed someone away, I desperately want them back. And that's where the abandonment comes into play. It's also a very isolating and lonely feeling. Especially after you realize that you've caused the abandonment, and then you just blame yourself forever for it. It hurts. I guess I'm blessed that I don't have issues like cutting. I'm blessed that I've been able to be really educated on the disorder and able to talk about it in terms, because I definitely understand it. Even if I didn't have it, I would understand it fairly well. But considering that I have it, I understand it exceptionally well. It makes me angry that people think that people like me are emo. No one wakes up like this. No one wakes up and decides that they want to feel like an absolute empty, dark, useless person. Borderlines account for so many inpatient hospitalizations and suicides that it's ignorant to not consider it serious and a serious mental illness. But it also needs to be understood that it's not something that can't be handled or dealt with. There's a new therapy. Well, it's not new. It's been out for some time. Marsha Linehan, who's basically the maverick for borderline treatment, developed a therapy known as dialectical behavioral therapy. And it helps us regulate our emotions, practice mindfulness, interpersonal skills, distress tolerance, all sorts of those different coping skills that we never learned, to help us especially deal with our emotions and our self-destructive behavior and our interpersonal immaturity. Because like I said, a lot of us have the emotional capacity of 15-year-olds. We're not sociopaths. We're not narcissists. Yes, some of our symptoms overlap, but to be afraid of us is stupid, because a lot of us are really good people. We're just really, really hurt. A lot of us don't even know we have the disorder. Like I said, I'm really lucky that I do. And I think that the best way to deal with someone in your life with the disorder is to set boundaries, but show compassion. You can't just tell them to suck it up and to deal with it. Like, really? You think that we wouldn't deal with it and suck it up if we could? Come on. So I think I'm going to keep making little video blogs about this, about my daily experiences with it, and just keep building from here. But yeah, this will be my first video, and I hope to talk about it some more.